why and when did I get involved with the Fountain Theater? I got involved with the Fountain Theater in 1997. And I had been doing a show with Indesha May Holland at the time, who wrote a piece called From the Mississippi Delta, which won awards and was going and being produced around the country. I got a phone call, and I had directed her piece in Minneapolis at the Illusion Theater and a couple other theaters. And I got a call from Stephen Sachs saying that she wanted me to direct the piece at the Fountain. And I had never heard of the Fountain. And he explained to me where it was located, the uniqueness of it, et cetera. And so that began my relationship with them. That's taken me up until today. I think altogether I've directed 10 productions with them over this span, and I have developed with Stephen. I helped develop Central Avenue. I helped develop Citizen by Claudia Rankin. I helped create and develop new works in the Fountain. One of the reasons why I like working at the Fountains to me and Stephen Sachs and Deborah Lawler have always been about doing works of social relevance around the world and dealing with different cultures and social issues. And he was doing that I will say I knew of 1997. So it's really interesting because more theaters like, oh, we've got to create and do profound works and getting diversity and productions and stories. Well, Stephen Sachs and the Fountain Theater and Deborah Lawler had been doing it. So, and it's genuine, it's authentic, and it's one of their mission statements. So I love working at the Fountain for the fact that when I go there, I feel safe. I go there and I know I'm doing and being supported with fellow colleagues of the same nature. Emmett Till was 14 years old and was from Chicago, Illinois, and was raised by a single parent, Mamie Mobley. And he was a sassy, full of life, embraced life, loving young man. And it was the time of his coming of age. And one summer, his family was from Mississippi, a portion of the family. His mother and her people were part of that migration, the Great Migration that went up in the industrial world to Chicago. A lot of people right now used to call Chicago, and they may still do, call Chicago Mississippi North because of the migration. Many people left Mississippi and migrated there. Okay, so that's how she got there. Well, her family, a part of her family, Mobley, still lived there and came up to Chicago and to visit. And in that particular visit, Emmett wanted to go down south. And his mother was, oh, no, you will not go down south. Because she knew he had never been down south. He didn't know the rules or the way of life or, of the South. And so she said, no. And Uncle Mo said, well, he should come down there. I need an extra hand in picking the cotton. And she fought him going, but then Uncle Mo said, yes. And so he did. But before he left, she was saying, Emmett, when you go down there, you cannot act the way you do here in Chicago. It is not as free. You know what I'm saying? You can't look him in the eye. So she gave him the rules. You cannot look him in the eye. You can't do for the survival rules. And so he went down there with he and his cousins. And then one day they went into Money, Mississippi. to the Bryant Market. So he went into the town where Bryant Market was, and he went into the store to buy candy. And the other thing, there was a rule there that, you know, when Black people would go into the stores, you could not touch. You'd either have to put the money on the counter because you didn't want any contact. So that was part of the rules. He ended up paying for the money, for the food, and he gave her the money in her hand. And there's a line in there, he said, he put the money in her hand. They're like, the kids were like, oh my God, he put the money in her hand. So he did. That was rule number 1 broken. And one of the things I did not mention, he stuttered. He had a speech impediment. And in that speech impediment, you know how some people use the inhalation in the breath, but sometimes what we thought was, it probably was, not so much that he whistled, but in his impediment, you know, as he was talking, the whistle came. And of course, that's how he whistled at a white woman. And when that happened, she lost it. They had to run out of town, and the word got that he had whistled at this white woman. She told her husband. The husband and his brother went to the house a week later. It took them a week to come to Uncle Moses' house in the country. And they took Emmett out of the house. And they said to Moses was a preacher, his uncle was a preacher. They said, we're just going in there, we're just going to talk to him, you know. And so it's like, we're going to teach him a lesson. But they took him to the barn, they tortured him, they shot him. And then after they killed him and murdered him, they wrapped a cotton gin, which is a big metal tire, it looks like a tire rim, around his neck and drowned him in the river. And what was very interesting about it, that cotton gin was supposed to keep him down, but his body floated up. And it was up, and it's so it's so spiritual in a way. And so they told her, oh, you don't want to really see him. We'll keep him here. We'll bury him down here. And she said, absolutely not. I don't care what condition he is. You're going to bring my baby back to Chicago. And then that's when you see the photos of him, not only what the water damage had done, but his face, how his eye was hanging, and just how they had mutilated him. And they said you could smell, before you even entered the funeral, Paul, you could smell it. And they wanted a closed casket, and she said, no, I want the world to know what happened to my son. So that's what happened. But in the meantime, they had a trial in Sumner, Mississippi, of the 2 white men, and the Carolyn Bryant, who was the one who said, he whistled at me, and that had created this. And of course, they were acquitted. Now, what's interesting, in 2017, Carolyn Bryant, who was the one who said he whistled at me, he's the one who did it, who pointed him out, before she died, confessed that she lied. When did I first hear about Emmett Till, and why did I want to direct it? Okay, here's a roundabout backstory to that. Because of my association with the Fountain Theater, and I knew Ifa Bayeza, the writer, when I was working on the East Coast. I was invited, when she was writing it, to come to a Fountain Theater for reading. And Ben Bradley, who's now deceased, created the space for Ifa to come and do that reading, so we could all hear it. I remember sitting in the audience, and at that time, the play was focused more on Emmett and his mother, the trial. So she had a 3-part linear play about Emmett. But the scene that she was working on that I was listening to was the scene with Emmett and his mother. And I found that fascinating because usually when people approach or talk about Emmett Till, it is about the greater drama of him going down there, the killing, the murder, the funeral, but we never really see him. You see him as this iconic martyr, but you never really see him as a mother's son, the human being. And it fascinated me. I remember after the reading, I went to her and I said, oh my goodness, I love this. This should, to me, I was like, this is the play. This should be the play. So done. And I just went, oh, I want to do this. There was a part where this play is so good. It has to be done. I would love to do it, but as life is, everybody's gone their separate ways. She ended up doing it, the linear version, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, at the Goodman Theater, and it was directed at that time by Scott. And it was, of course, lauded and applauded and got great reviews. And then I forgot about it. Then I think a couple of years after that, and this is an indirect way, see, it's an indirect way. I had just finished coming from Avatar, the movie. And I was like, that movie was so good, yay! And I'm driving down the freeway 405. And I get a call from Stephen Sachs, and he asked me, what are you doing? And I said, I'm driving, and I'm starting to go, yakety yak, as now you can tell that I do. I just finished seeing Avatar. You got to go see. And he says, Shirley Joe, are you driving? I go, yeah. And he said, pull over. And he informed me that the director, the original director that was on board, that they had 3 rehearsals. It was cast, design team, was Ben Bradley, who had created the space for Ifa to do the reading. He now was going to do her new, presentation, 5-person. It's a choral poem play, and he said that Ben had been murdered tragically, and that would I come in and then shepherd the play. And so what is very interesting about life, and I said, of course, first I said, I have to, read the script, and I read the script, and then I'm like, oh, and then, you're mourning someone and then you're going into a space where these actors, these 5 actors, had been, working with their director, who was now tragically not in their world anymore. What was very interesting about the genesis of that for me is I'm going into space where there's a trauma that just happened, doing a show where a trauma had happened. And so it was all in your cellular structure or mind, and then with the actors as we are presenting this piece. And I think it transcended and it resonated because you couldn't lie. First, you couldn't lie, but then you really couldn't lie because emotionally, your psyche and was affected the way Emmett's family was affected. Emmett's mother was affected. So, going on a table read, it was not usually when you go into the theater and you're doing a table read, you're there and you're researching and you're talking and you're doing all. But here, it was real life meets in those very, I call it perfect storm experiences. And so this cast, that cast, which is this cast, had a very unique and special experience that we all we tethered to one another. That relationship with all of us, it's been 10 years since that experience happened. But you would never know that these people have been separated and hadn't seen each other, because this common experience, we became very tight-knit as a family. And so the assemblage and I love Stephen for doing this. He has a unique way, has always had a way of being touched with what pieces that he picks for a season. And then for my last two experiences with him, with Citizen and now this, we developed Citizen together that was all over the country. At the time, 5 years ago, it seemed like every week there was a young Black man being shot, or young women. So we're doing a piece about what is it, the Citizen, the micro and macro aggressions. But unlike a usual play, you could be in the theater, do your show, go home, take off. You could go to the bar and talk to friends, but we would be in that world of micro, macro aggressions, walk out the door of the theater and being confronted with it. So that was another one where you're like, that you couldn't separate what you were doing and presenting from what was going on. And same thing with Emmett. But again, last month, with the killing of George Aubrey, and they were doing the memorials for him, Stephen wanted us to present Citizen in that time. And it is timeless. Like the piece Emmett is timeless. You would think, wait a minute, that happened in 1955. Do you mean, yes, 1955, those same themes, the same social discord is happening right now in 2020. The same thing. And so again, it is ripe. When he called us, 2 weeks was, I'm going to say last week, because we're putting this together. And he said, I want to do this on the weekend of the 65th anniversary of the death of Emmett Till, and also the new march on Washington. And I went, there he goes again. It's like, it's so timely. And it's like reading a book when you're young and you read it and then you get something out of it. And then when you read it as you grow older, Alice in Wonderland is a perfect example. Alice in Wonderland, when your kid is, oh, this is a good story. And then when you read Alice in Wonderland as an adult, you went, oh my gosh. And that's the same thing, is that every time, taking this piece now, how it will land for a new generation. Not my grandmother's generation, who was in 1950, but this generation, how this story still lands for us. We went in our process, in this unique process of putting the show together. There were tears, there was lots of laughter and camaraderie. When I'll tell you, here's a picture that tells you how I feel about the actors who I worked with 10 years ago. After we rehearsed and ran, I think we ran for 5 months. It was critically acclaimed. It got all these awards. But after we finally finished, one of the actresses worked at Disneyland. And so we all, the cast, the stage manager, and myself, we all went to Disneyland. And there you are, all the 60-year-old kids that lived inside of us went to Disneyland. And that can tell you in a nutshell how we felt about each other. So when we came back together in the Zoom format, there was the laughter, and there was the ribbing, and there was the signifying, and it brought me so much joy that I just started welling up and go, I love these people. These people have heart. They're generous. They're creative. They're talented. I love these people. So that's how I felt. What do I want the audience to get out of this play? Life. That in this journey we take with Emmett Till, it is the coming of age for all of us, and however you want to interpret that. Emmett was 14, like I said, full of life. His world was before him. He had these dreams that a 14-year-old would have. And he was surrounded with people who loved him. And his life led, he was right there. And with the tragedy of a young life cut short, but I always say your life lived is an example for all. Emmett's life lived became an example for all of us, that instead of falling, going into a fetal position and thinking the world is dark with man's inhumanity to man, that is, Maya Angelou says it in her poem, and they say it in this piece. And still I rise. So you don't let it pull you down, break you. That's it. You don't let it break you. But if the cycle of life lived is the joy, is the joy. So I think when you see it, you go through the gamut of human emotion. But at the end of it, yes, it is heart-wrenching, but it becomes a mother's love. And because of the mother's love, that becomes an example for other mothers and families and children to continue. Because his death became the rallying cry for the civil rights movement, for the awareness, because again, there's the light. The awareness exploded and say, no más, no más, no más. Something must be done. We have got to, back to being seen, we have got to look at each other. We have got to heal each other, right? And it's in increments where we are right now. And I call part of the thing is we are in a perfect storm. The pandemic, being locked down for that long period of time, forced people to, it was deconstructing us. And the things that you thought when you remember I said to be seen, to be safe, to be nurtured, that thing that you thought you were safe in your bubble, all of a sudden through something invisible shattered what your reality was. Then, and people are like getting cabin fever, then fear because you have an unknown that is, coming at at you and you can't grasp anything to hold on to, then then George's death, and then you get to witness it. It's not like, oh, that's a news cycle, or I can see that because I'm going to go play baseball. I'm going over here because, when you could deflect. But because we were here in this square, everybody witnessed man's inhumanity to man for 9 minutes. That's just like back in the day when the Vietnam War was going on. We were okay until they started televising, and the body bags were coming from those planes, and they were televising the Vietnam War. That was like a spark that goes, no mas, no mas, and the demonstrations on top of the turmoil and all of that Pandora's box that was happening then is the same kind of, when you're witnessing something and you can't deflect it. So by the time they said you can go and go outside now, the perfect storm is there. People were out. People had to unleash and express all of this that was being suppressed all of that time. We're at a time of awareness, We're at a time where ignorance is not bliss. And so those many ways that we can recall the soul and our humanity is important for us through here, for our sanity, for our spirit. I just want people to come and share this journey with these very special people that the Found Theater is sharing. And so that we are all a part of this unique time of our nation's healing, of our healing. So I invite you, to come share that experience with us.